we save from ending the refugee stream into our country will go toward vitalizing the inner city. Let me say that again. A portion of the money we save from ending the refugee stream into our country will go to vitalizing the inner cities. Americans have become refugees in our own country. I will cancel all wasteful climate change spending. We are giving billions and billions of dollars away for what? I don't know. $100 billion will be saved, and we will spend that for infrastructure in the inner cities. We're going to terminate Common Core and bring education back home. My proposal will allow every disadvantaged child in America to attend a school of their choice. School choice is the great civil rights issue of our time. I will also be establishing a commission to tackle the school to prison pipeline and to shut down that pipeline, and instead to create a great program to train for jobs. Restore fundings for traditional black colleges. Let me say that again. This is Donald Trump speaking. Restore funding to traditional black colleges. My agenda includes the protection of religious liberties, the promotion of family and support for the African American church. I will never ever take the African American community for granted, unlike Hillary. It will be my mission to prove to this country that yesterday does not have to be tomorrow. The vicious cycle of poverty can be broken. We must reject the failed elites who have been wrong about everything. They're stupid. Or do they have a plan? No. Drain the swamps. Drain the swamps of Washington. We are all going to get that done. The people opposing us promised us a new era of jobs and prosperity. Instead, they brought us heartache and loss and wasted $6 trillion. Imagine if we had that money and that money had been spent right at your homes. We have lost thousands of lives, and we are far worse off than we were when we started. Now we have created a vacuum and created ISIS. I'm not going to read the Hillary Clinton stuff. I'm just reading the stuff that pertains to the black community because that's who he's talking to. I went to Washington, D.C. to celebrate the opening of our new hotel, the new post office. I went there to support my kids. We must support our children. I was also there for another reason, the workers. We rebuilding an old post office and rebuilding of our country. To vitalize our country, I am tired of the excuses for the lame politicians. Enough waiting. The time is now. There is no dream beyond our reach. Maybe the greatest of that potential is in the African American community. We have to choose to believe not in our politicians, but to believe in ourselves, and everything is possible. Let's open a new chapter of success, especially for our African American communities. My highest and greatest hope that the Republican Party can be the home of the African American community. Together, we will have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. God bless you. What an honor. Now, I'm gonna just say, I get chill bumps, and I'm not up and down my leg, kind of like the white guy. But I've not heard any person in my lifetime. I'm 64 years old. Just had a birthday a couple weeks ago. Give a speech like that, or ask for our vote. I'm just saying, as a community, we've been taken for granted for so long, and we've been played by our politicians, both locally and nationally, for so long that I just know something is going to change. I got a feeling those folks who understand the old church song, something's going to change. So I wanted to bring those words to you because I know many of you guys may not have heard it. I'm just saying there's somebody out there that's asking for your vote, who's asking and know and understand that they have spent billions of dollars bringing other people to this country and paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to families a year to come here. And we have people here in this community, in this country, that's struggling every day, and we still sending and spending billions of dollars on other folks. We have black communities that have had and needed support, not begging, because you can't beg for something that's already yours. I mean, we spend tax dollars, we pay fees, we do everything that everybody else do, but somehow many of those dollars never come back to our community. They lost. So I'm giving to you and saying to you, I'm giving the call-in number for you to so you can call in 813-251-9867. That's here on TMP Porch Talk Radio Show. I wanted to say that before we brought on our guest, and he's going to talk to you a little bit because he is one of our state representatives, and he's a great representative, doing a great job. And part of what we do is not just talk about the national stuff, but we want to talk about the local stuff. So our guest, Sean Harrison, Representative Sean Harrison, is going to tell you who he is, kind of what he's done, and why he deserves your vote. Sean.
Thank you, Eddie. It's a pleasure to be here today. Appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit to your audience. Let me tell you a little bit about me. Some people don't know a whole lot about me, but I've been a 30-year resident of House District 63, which the geography of the district is New Tampa, Lutz, Carrollwood, and the University of South Florida. And I arrived here in Tampa in 1983 as a freshman at the University of South Florida. And other than my 3 years in law school up in Gainesville, never left. I've never lived anywhere else but within the boundaries of the district. So I've literally watched New Tampa and the area around New Tampa grow from zero, from flat fields out there and just a 2-lane road on Bruce B. Downs up into the very vibrant and growing community that it is today. And a little bit when I was in college, I was actually people don't know. A lot of people don't know this, but I was actually the president of the USF College Democrats, and I was an Indiana Democrat, so I was fairly conservative. And then when I graduated from law school, I felt more comfortable moving to the Republican Party, and so I did. But I have always believed in listening to all sides of an issue and then making a reasoned decision about issues that impact our community. And I've done that through my entire political career. I started in 1996 as the chairman of the Tampa Palms Community Development District out there in New Tampa, which is the localest of all local government. It's really and truly where the rubber meets the road. And I spent 2 years chairing that district where for the very first time we balanced our budget. And we gave ourselves a nice little budget surplus at the end of my 2-year tenure. At that point, 1999, there was an open city council seat for the new Tampa area and the North Tampa area. And so I decided to throw my hat in that ring and was successful. So I'd gone from just a college student at USF and then graduate from the University of Florida Law School, and came back home, married my college sweetheart, and we had bought a house and started to have a family, and had an opportunity to serve my government or my community a little bit more in the city council role. So I ran for that. I won, and I became New Tampa's very first elected official from ever. And so we were really literally making it up as we went out there in New Tampa when sort of things were brand new and we were creating zoning that would work for New Tampa and building roads and things like that. And I got to have a firsthand impact on not only growing up in a community, but helping that community grow and mature as well. So it was a really neat time, and I got reelected then and spent a total of 8 years on the city council. Now, keep in mind that for a lot of that time, I was the only Republican on the city council. And the Mayor Greco during my first term, and then Mayor Oreo during the second term, both Democrats, and then I was the only Republican. Rose Ferlita served with me for a while, but for a time I was the only Republican. And despite all of that, and I was on the losing end of a lot of 6-1 votes. Despite that, my colleagues thought enough about me to elect me the vice chairman, and then I also chaired the Hillsborough County Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I've always been able to sort of reach across the aisle and do what was right for our community. After my 8 years on the Tampa City Council, I had an opportunity to go up to Tallahassee, and that's where I've been. So a couple of things that I did in Tallahassee that I'm really, really proud of. Due to my service at the city council level, I developed a great deal of respect for our men and women in uniform, our cops and our firefighters. And I sponsored a bill in Tallahassee as a result of that called the Fallen Heroes Family Tax Relief Act in 2012. If you remember the ballot in 2012, there were 11 constitutional amendments on it. It was very long, and we were number 9. We were almost at the very bottom. And I was a little concerned about that because typically people will sort of stop reading and skip over things. But we were able to get that constitutional amendment passed by a 64% majority. And what that amendment did is it gave a homestead tax exemption to the surviving family of people who are killed in the line of duty. So if you're a Tampa cop and you get killed, no taxes on your family's home until they move on. Firefighter, same thing. Military, same thing. If you live in Florida and you die protecting us, we're going to protect your family.
That's right.
And so as a result of that, I was the 2012 Fraternal Order of Police Legislator of the Year. In this past session, I did a lot of work on senior protection issues. I'm a healthcare attorney by trade, and I was named the 2016 Legislator of the Year of the Florida Assisted Living Society. So really feel like I have had a good, successful career in politics, 20 years. This is my 20th year in office now. Started when I was 31. I'm 51 now. And I feel like I still have something to give back to my community. So I believe strongly in what I'm doing. I wouldn't do it if I didn't think that I still had something to offer. I have always traditionally had a lot of support from our colleagues across the aisle. And I'm counting on that again. We're in a historic election right now. 2016, I don't know if we'll see anything like 2012 again, but we're definitely in a presidential cycle where there's typically a lot more Democrats that come out to vote. And I represent a swing district. In fact, I wouldn't even call it a swing district. It's a Democratic district up there by about a 6% majority. So I've got a lot of work to do to hang on to a seat like that in a presidential election year. When you got Hillary and Donald Trump on the two very, very dramatic figures, and
diametrically
opposed,
yeah.
and but both very both their bases love them, and the other side hates them, and so we've got a lot of that going on, and we've been out at the polls now for a week, almost a week, and we're 12 hours a day, 7 to 7. We cover those early voting locations. And people have, for the most part, been on their best behavior, but there have been a couple of flare-ups a little bit, and I expect that we'll probably see that continue as we get a little closer. So that's a bit about my history. like I said, I enjoy my public service. I think it's an honor to be elected by your colleagues and your neighbors and your friends to speak for them, and no matter if that's the Tampa City Council or if that's in Tallahassee. And so that's a little bit about my beliefs, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more about some issues. If you guys want to talk about issues, I know.
Give me contact info so they can call you, or email you, or text you, or go to your website and whatever.
Yeah, thank you. Right. So my website is www.SeanHarrison.com, and my Sean is SHAWN, not SEAN. So it's SeanHarrison.com. And then if you will reach out to me on the website, then we'll get right back to you. We're very good about returning phone calls and responding back to folks. So please visit the website, check it out, and give me a call if you have any questions.
Now, one of the things that I'm an ex candidate for U.S. Congress, and I would tell folks, because one of the main things that happened was they say, well, I can't vote for you. No, you may not be able to vote for me, but take in consideration that every bill passed in the U.S. Congress affect everybody in the country. So that means that you need to be engaged and be concerned about everybody that gets elected. So the same thing for the state.
Sure.
State representatives, when you pass a bill, you passing a bill that affects everybody in the state of Florida. So they should be concerned, not just that the fact that they can't vote for you, but they can help, they can volunteer, they can give contributions, because again, at the end of the day, it's about the statewide. Your decisions affect everybody in the state of Florida. So
Sure.
So people should know who you are, at least know your name, know what district you represent, and when there's policy changes, you have to do kind of like a committee thing. You got to get other representatives together, and maybe even get a couple of senators together to make stuff work through the process.
Absolutely.
And the fact that you got that bill, I'm a big fan of that bill, and I didn't even know you was the one that made it happen, because that's important. That's important, because I know a lot of families that are military families that was having their houses repossessed. They was going through this tax issue because the breadwinner passed.
Right.
And so you got the family being stressed several different ways, and one of them being financially. So the fact that you did that, I am going to say thank you very much, not just for me, but for everybody in the state of Florida, because that is something that was needed.
Yes, thank you, and you're absolutely right, and that was why we did it, because when I was a councilman, I had the unfortunate honor of attending a lot of funerals for slain police officers, and there's nothing more moving than seeing a funeral for a police officer who's been killed in the line of duty. And I carried that with me when I went to Tallahassee. And you're exactly right. Think about being a young mother and you get a call in the middle of the night that your husband has just been killed, and something as simple as a routine traffic stop maybe. And he's never going to come home again. And you have to tell the children that, and then you have to deal with the aftermath. Right. And some taxes on homes are $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a year, and when you've lost that income, right, it can be devastating. And the worst thing we could ever do is to turn our backs on the men and women who protect us. And so that's why I wanted to sponsor that bill. And I will say it passed unanimously, as you can imagine. Right. The House and the Senate, and then the governor, in a very moving ceremony, came down to Tampa and signed it right here. So we were sort of the epicenter of that the effort. Right. But you bring up another interesting point, Eddie. Thank you, and that is the necessity of working with your colleagues to get things done, to be effective. And I think, uniquely qualified to be able to do that because of my history, and something that my opponent is not uniquely qualified to do. And let me share just a couple of the good points about Florida and where we are right now. In 2015. Florida had the number one job growth of the 10 largest states in the country. We were number one. We created 240,000 new jobs in Florida. Private sector jobs, not government jobs, private sector jobs. We reduced testing in schools, a big thing that we hear a lot about. Right. No tuition increases across the board at any of our colleges in Florida. We have a 44-year low crime rate right now in the state of Florida. And we have, and this is important, we have record school funding right now in our public schools in Florida. We are spending more per pupil in our public schools right now than we have ever spent in Florida. And that is something that the Democrats have always complained about. They say when times are tough, you're cutting budgets. And that's right, we do have to cut budgets when times are tough. When I was a freshman in 2010, we had the largest deficit in Florida's history, $4 billion deficit out of an $80 billion budget. That meant we had to cut a lot of very, very important programs. The following year, we restored those programs because we had the money to do it. But thank goodness that we have a constitutional requirement to have a balanced budget in Florida. Because if we didn't, we'd end up like in places like California and New Jersey and some places like that where they have real problems. So we've got to tighten our belts when we have to. But thank goodness thanks to leadership of Governor Scott and the legislature, we're creating jobs and we're increasing our tax rolls right now in the state of Florida. And we were able to do that for education. Having said that, though, I am a big, big believer in school choice and in charter schools.
Those things hit our community harder than
they
anybody
do.
else.
They do.
Yes, yes.
School choice in the African American community is a very, very powerful message.
And it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And we're all parents. All of us who have kids, we all can have that in common. We all know what it's like to struggle with raising kids.
Right. Yes.
And if you're in a school where you're afraid for your kid's safety, that's not right. You should be able to get out of that situation and get your child into school where they can feel safe and where they can learn. So I'm a big proponent in school choice. I'm a big proponent of charter schools. I'm a Republican. I think competition is a good thing.
I do too.
And so when charter schools are competing with our public schools, then I think that raises the bar for everyone. And so my daughter went to charter school in middle school and had a great experience there. And I really believe that that's the right thing to do. I think that level of competition like that brings everybody up. So I want to continue to fight for our kids. I served on the K through 12 education committee this past session and learned a lot about public education. I come from a family of public educators. My dad was a teacher. My in-laws are both educators. In fact, my mother-in-law was the very first female school superintendent up in Bay County in the Panhandle.
Wow.
So I know a lot about education, and so I was honored to be able to put that into use this past session.
And I had a meeting last week with the school board member, and Hillsborough County School Board member, and one of the issues that came up is that Hillsborough County School is hurting. They got 300 air conditioning units that needs repair, and somehow they was funded by the legislators in the past, and then it went away for 7 years, and then it got refunded at the rate that it was when it went away, not the modern equivalence. So they have told me that at some point in time they will need legislative help. And so I said, okay, well, let me see if I can get some legislators that's willing to sit down and talk about the problem and maybe come up with some kind of solution. But I learned this morning at another meeting I was in with Sean Shaw and Darryl Roussan that the money that was going to be asked for had already been asked for. So October the 14th, whoever was asking for money had to ask for it so it could be considered this session. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like a catch-22. But the fact that there still needs to be help and that nothing's been finalized may be a place where we put together this coalition of local legislators to help our local school system out. Is that something that you can kind of help us with, direct us, show us how to do it, how that kind of work? So the community knows also.
Yeah, sure. And this is a good point because when it comes to the safety of our children, and air conditioning is a requirement in Florida. Right. When it comes to the safety of our children, there's no Republicans and Democrats. We're all parents, right, and we're all looking out for the best interests of our kids. So I know now Senator Roussan very well, and I look forward to working with Representative Shaw. And you'll find that we tend to come together as a delegation in Hillsborough County when we have common problems like that. Right. And so we will support their efforts. and we hope that will be returned, and they will support our efforts. When we did the budget request this past session, we all got together in the room. Every Hillsborough County legislator, whether you were a senator or a representative, we all got together and we said, what are each one of our own individual top priorities? And we each went around a table and we wrote them down, and we made a pledge to one another that we were going to do everything that we could from the majority party and the minority party to make sure that those top funding priorities got funded, because it's local, it's helping the folks back home. And Representative Shaw will have a different constituency that he's representing than I do. But if there's something that's important to him in his district, I'm going to help him do that. I don't care what his political ideology is, and people will return that. So I think that we will definitely be able to help with that. But school funding is a complicated matter because people don't realize that. All of these, like the tests that we mentioned, people complain about testing. Well, only if some of those tests are mandated by the state. The others are mandated by the local school board. And so when we tend to be blamed for a lot of things in Tallahassee that really are the fault of the local folks back home. So I look forward to helping on that issue. That's something we all believe in.
Will you have any questions?
Well, thanks for coming. Representative Harrison, it's a pleasure to see you again. Mm-hmm. We had Representative Ralston on last week, and we talked a lot about transportation. Transportation is the buzzword, is the big bugaboo in this area because there's so much confusion. It's as divisive a subject as any. Mm-hmm. How do you see state transportation and budgeting for transportation in this particular session coming up, and what it looks like 10, 15 years? Because they keep telling me there's about half a billion people coming to this area in the next 15 seconds. So transportation is going to be a big deal. Mm-hmm. As you look at Hillsborough County and the corridor, especially in that area where your representative is in 63, mm-hmm. Frankly, Bruce B. Downs, can I say this on the radio? Is awful. That's not the word.
I live there,
that's
right,
not the phrase I was going to use, but my pastor may be listening. So it's horrendous, by the way. And when it's under construction, it's even worse.
Right.
How do you see transportation and transportation issues around the state, especially around here and in your district?
Right. Great. Thanks, Willie. Good question. So I have had the pleasure of representing the Bruce B. Downs corridor now since 1999, and I can tell you that that has always been the top issue for people in New Tampa is transportation, which in a way is a good thing. We don't have other issues that other communities have. When you're complaining about traffic, you're pretty lucky that's all you're complaining about. And so how I see this all fitting in, and I have some experience in this. I was the chairman of the Hillsborough County Metropolitan Planning Organization, so I know how all of this works. There is a big movement now, statewide and nationwide, towards regional transportation networks. And we actually have an organization called TBARTA now, the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transportation Authority. And I think you're going to see more and more focus on that, where you have facilities like Bruce B. Downs, which crosses from Pasco County into Hillsborough County, out where I live, and then it continues on into the USF area and connects into downtown Tampa. I think that you're going to see more focus on those sorts of facilities like that, and more state funding going into moving people between counties. And our view in Tallahassee, my view is local projects should be handled locally. If the city of Tampa wants to build a light rail system, let the city of Tampa build a light rail system. If they have the money, I'm not going to stand in their way. But our job as the state is to move people across the state, across county lines. And so I think you're going to continue to see a focus on that. I'm a big believer in multiple modes of transportation. I do think rail has a role. I do think buses have a role, and I think the good old American car has a role. I mean, we all want to live in different places, right? Not everyone wants to live in the urban core of a large city where you don't need a car. Some of us want to live in the suburbs, and we need cars. Right. Some of us want to live in the country where you need a car with a big gas tank. And so we got to make sure that we don't say that we're all sort of this homogeneous type of resident who only wants one thing, and we got to recognize that.
Well, I think that's interesting. I think it's also interesting when you start talking about legislation and regulation, when you start having regional authorities, and not everybody in that region is accountable to those people who actually live there, mm-hmm. especially if you have them across county lines. Right. When you have someone serving on a regional transportation commission that lives in Dade City, and I live in Temple Crest, that person's not responsible to me. How are we going to, when we start looking that direction, how are we going to continue to sort of assuage all those concerns? Because frankly, Sean, that's my biggest concern. When you start talking about regional and across county line and across district lines, that's great if you're my guy in District 63, because I'll call you or drop by your house. You know what? I got that. I can do that. But if the guy who's also on this regional commission is in Dade City mm-hmm. or in Zephyr Hills, then maybe he doesn't have the same concern for me, and maybe I don't have the same access to them. Mm-hmm. How do we assuage all those concerns? Because people like me are concerned about those kind of things when we start talking about regional authorities.
Yeah, no, that's a very good
spending
point.
My money.
That's a very good point. And where I live in Hillsborough County, we are more directly impacted by the people coming south from Pasco County Certainly. That are using Bruce B. Downs as the opposite way. I mean, we do travel north a little bit. We've got a really cool couple of malls up there. But for the most part, they're coming down our way. And so it's important to have county commissioners be able to cooperate with one another. It's important to have city council people be able to cooperate with each other, especially when you're representing those border communities. The greatest thing that we have at our disposal, though, is most of these regional authorities like this aren't self-funding. They rely on other governments to give them money. And the state of Florida, when we're talking about our state dollars flowing, we have oversight over that. So if your local state representative or senator feels like that community is getting shortchanged, then they should step up to the plate for you. And I've always been able to do that, and I think that will continue. So I do think that to some extent it's just a matter of people being able to cooperate with each other. And then if in the situation where they're just doing planning rather than actually having funding coming their way, then there's a lot of control over that the state can have.
All right, so we appreciate you hanging out with us here,
sure. My pleasure.
And if you want to, before you go, I want to make sure that you tell the audience what you got in the pipeline coming up for the next session. And again, give them all your information
right.
so that they know who to vote for and who to contact and how to contact you and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you. Now, I'm not going to jinx this because I have 10 days before an election, and I don't want to be presumptuous here.
Okay.
So for right now, I am focused on 12 hours a day greeting people.
There you go.
And I'm going to do my best to get back to Tallahassee. If I'm so fortunate that the voters elect to send me back, then I'll continue the same type of work that I've always done in Tallahassee, which is looking out for our seniors and looking out for the men and women who protect us. And especially with our senior population, none of us are getting younger.
No.
And I myself right now am going through placing my father, thinking about where will he need to be. And it's a kind of a heart-wrenching decision that you're going to have to make. All of us will have to make eventually. So I'm going to continue to work on senior issues and making sure we take care of our greatest generation. I appreciate the opportunity to come in. My name, again, is, those of you who came in late, is Sean Harrison. And I represent District 63, which is the northern part of Hillsborough County. My website is www.seanharrison.com. And please check me out. There's a little bit more information on my website. I've got some movies, some videos on there that we're commercials and things like that. So please learn a little bit about me. And I would be honored by your vote. And I've got to reach across. I know we're on a Republican. We got a lot of Republicans here in the studio, but I've got to reach across the aisle to win this election.
Right.
And so that means that I've got to have a few Democrats come over my way and a heck of a lot of independents. And we're working very hard for those votes. I've always been honored by being able to cross party lines. And I will say this as I leave. There have been 3 newspapers that have issued endorsements in this race. The Tampa Bay Times, La Gaceta, and the Florida Sentinel Bulletin. I've received every single endorsement from those papers. I am the only person. I don't know that I've ever gotten every endorsement of every newspaper you can possibly get, but I did it this time. I hit the trifecta.
All right.
And how often, you guys know this, how often is it that the Florida Sentinel Bulletin endorses a Republican?
Right, yeah.
How often is it that the proud Mantega family that owns La Gaceta endorses a Republican? And even our great statewide Tampa Bay Times, who many of my colleagues would argue leans slightly to the left, how often do they endorse Republicans? So that says something, and I'm very honored and very pleased and very happy about that, and I'm going to continue fighting for the next 10 days.
Well, thank you so very much, Sean. And as a radio show, I mean, it's been great to be able to present these opportunities to candidates, because it was so long that traditionally Republican and conservative candidates did not have access to the urban community. Right. So they only got it secondhand or third hand, but this way they're getting it directly. So thank you, and thank all the Republican candidates that's been on this show. We got one more week, and again, my goal was try to get everybody on. And we presented opportunities. Sometimes, someone opens the door and folks don't walk through. So again, that's the personal part of it. But for us, it was great to have the opportunity to do this and make this happen.
Yeah, me too. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope we had a lot of people listening, and
yes.
They'll go out and vote now. So,
yes.
And thank you guys for the opportunity.
So if you want to hang around, you can. If you need to leave, you can leave. So
all right.
So at this point in time, our producers over there keep telling me to say who we are and what we're doing. So I guess okay. This is AM 1150 WTMP. You're listening to the Porch Talk Radio Show. I am your host, Eddie Adams Jr., and sitting here next to me or beside me is Willie Lawson. And we're just trying to make some stuff happen. I'll give you the call-in number. The call-in number here is 813-251-9867. So again, 813-251-9867. At the beginning of the program, I thought I was reading or making a statement about someone that made a significant statement themselves. So I was reading part of Donald Trump's speech. And I went to an event yesterday that if many of you who are my Facebook friends, and many of you may not be my Facebook friends, but you can go to somebody's Facebook page without being their friend and look at the material that's there. I had an opportunity to meet the women of the Trump campaign. I know many of you guys know Diamond and Silk, which was, I want to say, if there was ever a phenomenon that's called a Facebook phenomenon, these two ladies became international stars because of what they were saying on Facebook about Donald Trump. So now that I've met them in person, I think what they're saying on Facebook and on their Facebook sites and the stuff it's touching, because it's two black females that I guess a couple years ago made sure the world knew that they were for Donald Trump. And they've been making sure the world know that they for Donald Trump, and they say why they support Donald Trump. And there's other people in the photo. There's a photo there with myself and Laura Trump, who was the Donald Trump's daughter-in-law. So again, it was just one of those photo fests that we had a good time. So it wasn't serious, but it was just an opportunity to get some stuff out there. So Willie, you want to?
What's interesting about Diamond and Silk is that we are in a time in this country where I think that although it seems divisive to a lot of people, I think we're in a really good place where a lot of people feel comfortable enough with actually expressing their truth. And people aren't hiding anymore. There aren't as many secret voters because we've had in our community forever. I mean, the Black Republican experiment is not something that is brand new. There have been Black Republicans and conservatives forever and ever and ever. But what's been happening is that a lot of people have been on the DL. People have been on the down low. They say one thing in public and get in a voting booth and then vote however they want to vote, which people can still do. But now I think we're in such a good place that, and I think you know what, and this is something that a lot of people who maybe the people who pay for this show may disagree with me. It's because of the election of Barack Obama in 2008 that we see a lot of people decide that they are going to be open about their politics. And I think a lot of it in my lifetime, because I'm not quite as old as you. As a matter of fact, I'm not only younger, but I'm better looking.
All right.
But you know what? But in my lifetime, I've seen that a lot of people. This is a time where a lot of people have been really open. You know, I think there's a general openness with people, but people have been a lot more open, and in that, because as long as you stay true to your truth, I think people on either side of the political aisle respect that. I mean, there is a young man sitting across from me wearing a "I love President Obama" hat. But he's one of the best radio guys in his situation I've worked with ever.
Right.
And he's had to sit here and listen to all this Republican drivel for about 4 weeks now, and has been nothing but a professional and a gentleman. And I think that we're in a place where we can do that now. And I think especially in the urban corridor in urban America, it is so important to have all of these messages come to bear for the benefit of our community. I think that we're finally starting to do this, Eddie. I think we're finally starting to do what other communities have always done. It's a concept called bottom lining. How is this person or how is this thing going to benefit me where I live and where my family is? And how is it going to help me stay employed? And like Sean Harrison was talking about, how is this going to benefit my kids in school? And it isn't this greater overarching thing. It's more practical. It's how are these going to benefit me? And I think that some of the benefits of people like Diamond and Silk is that they address those issues. How is this going to benefit you? How is this person going to benefit where you are, your financial situation, your school situation? And I think that's bottom lining. Other communities have always done this. I think that we have been in the urban corridor in urban America, we have been ignored by one side and abused by the other. Mm-hmm. I don't know how else to say it, or at least taken for granted. And I think that a lot of people are starting to get that, which is why you see the emergence of, especially in the urban corridor, the emergence of support for people like Bernie Sanders, which obviously was an outsider on the left side, but an outsider who was saying different things, right. and wasn't toting whatever the party line was, not at all, really. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a really, really good thing. I think we're in a much better place than mainstream media would have you believe. I think we're a lot closer together, even in our differences, than mainstream media would have you believe. I think we're in a much better place.
Well, part of what has happened in America too, what has happened in the black community, is there was a big old filter over the community, because the information that got to the community was always filtered through liberal resources. So the conversation that we're having here on this station with you is because a lot has changed. We get to make something that a lot of folks don't understand the concept of. You cannot make like the guy say who buys suits, the suit factory, Men's Warehouse, whatever it was. I'm getting a free plug here. But make an educated decision. And that educated decision can't be educated if you only got one side and everybody on the side is saying the same things. You need to know what the other side was so you can know what you missed, you can know the other side of the conversation. That's when you're making an educated decision, because you've heard both sides in some shape, some version of the contrarian idea based upon the one that you always get, because the one that we always get is the Democratic version of what's happening. It's the Democratic version for the last 60, 70 years of what's happening. And for someone to say, well, when Trump say more of the same, and folks say, okay, I like where I'm at, I don't think many black folks are saying they like where they at. They don't like where their communities are. They're not saying that, but according to the media, you love it. And they got mad at Trump for even saying, well, what you said, they got bad education. What you saying, they got bad schools. What you say, they got unsafe communities. What you saying, the community's impoverished. Why is the community impoverished? A lot of these great impoverished communities are run by black folks. I'm just saying that. They happen to be black Democrats. I'm just saying that because there's some communities that are run by black folks that are not impoverished, like Houston, Texas. They got a black mayor, and they're doing great. You don't hear the bad stories, because they don't have the bad stories. They're not the traditional black cities like Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago. The list goes on and on and on. Well, that's not only just got bad, but been bad for a long time. And I think that's what Donald Trump is talking about when he said, "I'm going to put resources and infrastructure and money and all these other things in your community. I'm going to change your life." That's basically what he said. And he didn't bat around the bush because it can be done. Money in the right places in the right community can change infrastructure, would change the next generation of black folks' lives. He knows and understands how that happened. As opposed to making a bunch of promises, the fact that he's made the promise, he's made the commitment. He has said to the world, I'm going to put some money, I'm going to change the dynamics of how black and urban communities in America work. We're going to make them work. They currently don't work, and you've been getting 50 years of promises from Democrats, and somehow you still where you were 50 years ago. This is me talking now. I'm saying, whatever plantation or whatever version of the plantation 2.0, 4.0, 6.0, or whatever version thereof is where you are now. And he's saying it could be better. Not only can your life and your plantation be better, the whole country can be better. And we're spending billions of dollars on people who are not Americans and are not making this country better, and they need to be spent on you. Now, that makes logical sense. It's something to me about hearing something that makes sense to me, not because it's political rhetoric, but because sometimes certain things make sense. And if you're in your mind and you evaluating the conversation, and you say, I didn't know that. You know that they're spending billions of dollars on folks from other countries, and they coming from countries that have kings and sheiks and Arabs and all kind of other folks that whose country have billions of dollars to spend on them. They choose not to, so they come here and we spend that money on these folks and ignore people who've been here for 200-300 years. That's all I'm saying at this point, Willie.
Well, you know what? I think that again we're in a good place because the media that has forever pushed this narrative into our communities 24/7, 365, especially after the advent of 24-hour news cycle. The 24-hour news cycle and cable has said to our communities and said to black people time and time again, this side, these are the people who care about you. These are the people who care about you. These are the people who care about you. Now, with the advent of the internet and all sorts of other websites and all sorts of other influences, Facebook being one of them, is that a lot more truth is coming out. A bunch more truth is coming out. And there's no there's no gatekeeper. And with there being no gatekeeper, people are starting to get information from places that they had normally not gotten it. And with that, with like Diamond and Silk, they've been able to make a decision based on a lot more information, not the fire hose of information coming from mainstream media. And I think that's made the difference, and that's going to continue to make a difference in our community and in our country. And by the way, this show is paid for by the Hillsborough County Republican Executive Committee. It is not authorized by any candidate or candidate's committee. You can go to www.hillsboro.gop. That's www.hillsboro.gop. Remember, improve your life. Vote Republican. But we can. The cool thing is we can say that because what's important here, Eddie, is I found out that we did a Juneteenth celebration a few years ago when we were working with another organization and the part that hasn't happened yet, but it's starting to happen, is that the chains got broken off our feet during the Emancipation Proclamation, but finally the chains are being broken off our psyche and our minds, that we can make the decisions that we have to make for ourselves and our families, even if they don't line up with whatever the company line has been for so many years.
Right.
And I think that that's making the difference, and that'll make a difference in communities like Detroit and East St. Louis and Ferguson and all those places that have struggled around the country for so long under a one-party rule system that has simply ignored or taken for granted the people in those communities that are really, really hurting.
And the difference this cycle, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. I believe that the black community will elect some Republicans that now will have no choice except to be responsive to that community. Because one thing has always been the case. Politicians, elected officials, know who elect them. That's not a new concept. It's just in the past, the black community had not elected a lot of Republican candidates. And Republicans found out a way to get elected without the black community. It's going to be more fun knowing that they owe you also as a community for them being elected. And I hold each and every one of you responsible for making sure that they understand the needs of this community. So I'm gonna. It's getting close to that time where we got to go. Again, this is Eddie Adams Jr., your host, and Willie Lawson co-hosting, and Porch Talk Radio. That unique experience of a community conversation about things in the community, and we're holding you, and we're holding our elected officials, and everybody within the sound of my voice responsible. No matter what happened on November 8th, your community needs your input. So in order for us to be successful, we're in this thing together. Democrats, Republicans, Independent. The world will change on November the 9th. Whether it's for the better or for the worse, it's up to you. Until next week, have a great one. Bye-bye.